democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
And welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. In Kenya, opposition leader Raila Odinga has called off further street protests after accusing the police of killing at least 7 of his supporters at a mass rally on Thursday. Odinga leads the Orange Democratic Party, or ODM. His supporters were protesting the contested results of the December 27th election that gave President Mwai Kibaki a narrow victory. Following 3 days of mass rallies, ODM spokesman Salim Lone said the opposition was switching tactics and would launch an economic boycott of companies and business interests affiliated with the government. Riot police armed with tear gas and live bullets confronted hundreds of Odinga supporters on Wednesday and Thursday. Odinga said Thursday that more than 1,000 people had died since the elections and accused the police of turning the country into a, quote, killing field.
Under the orders of the government, the police are executing innocent citizens at will, while the world watches and talks about dialogue. How do you dialogue with the killers and thieves?
The United States and former colonial power Britain have called on Kibaki's government to allow peaceful protests to go ahead. They, along with 11 other nations, have also threatened to cut aid to Kenya if the situation deteriorates. But government spokesman Alfred Mutua dismissed the threat on Thursday.
We have said that these foreign missions and foreigners are here as development partners. As partners, you assist in development. You're not here to give us a lifeline, and you're not here to threaten us. You're here as a development partner, and we have said we'll not allow ourselves to be blackmailed.
Maina Kiai is the chair of the Kenyan National Human Rights Commission. He's joining us on the phone from Nairobi for an update on the latest developments. We're also joined by Kenyan writer and activist Mukoma Ngugi. He's in Cleveland, Ohio. He's the co-editor of Pambazuka News, a weekly electronic forum on social justice and Africa. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Let's begin with Mukoma Ngugi. Talk about the latest in your country, Kenya.
Well, I think actually the call by the opposition not to have any more protests is the right decision. I think the call for dialogue is also a correct position. But I think we also need to look back on the beginnings of the violence and lay blame squarely on both parties. Now, the shooting of unarmed people, as we have seen, there's actually a very disgusting video on YouTube of a Kenyan policeman shooting an unarmed protester is definitely wrong. But we also need to go back and look at the role the opposition has played in fueling this violence. It's not fair for Raila just to blame the government on the violence, while we have had what most people would consider organized massacres of innocent Kenyans by ODM supporters.
Maina Kiai, the chair of the Kenyan's National Human Rights Commission, the situation there on the ground, your sense of the government's willingness to halt some of these attacks on the population?
Well, you know, it seems to me that, and because I happen to go out to the Rift Valley and out to Nyanza, where the different types of killings, is that there actually is a very small force and very limited security force out in the Rift Valley where there are militias or organized groups of citizens killing others who are perceived to supporting Mwai Kibaki. On the other side, we have got police in Nyanza, in Kisumu, Kakamega, and Migori, parts of Kenya, using live ammunition, shooting to kill for sure, because we came across at least 300 people who had gunshot wounds in Kisumu following the protests that started off in the election. So we've got a state that seems to be putting its emphasis on stopping violence, or stopping protestation rather, in Nyanza, and then not providing enough security to people who are victims in the Rift Valley. But it just seems to me that there is a serious omission and commission on different levels by the state with the crisis that we are at in today.
Maina Kiai, what are the numbers of people you understand? So far, 600 people dead, at least hundreds of thousands displaced. What is happening?
That's about about the figures we're working with. We don't have accurate figures because we're still trying to get to the bottom of it. And every day we hear of more deaths and more displacements and evictions. So what clearly needs to happen is a dialogue needs to happen between Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga, because what we have now is clearly a political crisis and has been a political crisis. And it cannot be solved by courts. It cannot be solved it's not an election issue anymore. No, it's a legal issue. It's a political issue that has deep roots and that will expose the cleavages within our society. If we don't address them now, we will get into further trouble. So what's happening now is that there have been mass protests in Mombasa. We have reports of about 1 or 2 people shot dead in Mombasa. We have got cases in Nairobi of shootings again by the police of protesters. And part of the reason this violence is going on, and as somebody who has been involved in mass action and in peaceful protestation myself before, is that protests are generally always start off peaceful until the police intervene. The police have given this blanket ban against protests, which is illegal. They don't have the power to do so, but they keep doing it, and just using the force of the use of force to stop them. And when you close off peaceful, non-violent spaces for expression, then ultimately you get illegal spaces being opened. So it's really incumbent and necessary on the state to allow peaceful protests and charge those people who want to have the protest with maintaining peace and law and order. It's been done before. We've succeeded. It's not anything new in this country.
And what about the efforts of leaders from either other African nations or outside of Kenya to try to bring the parties together? Have any of those borne fruit at all?
Well, we haven't yet borne fruits that we can see, but I think we need to welcome all this mediation efforts as they come, because I think anything that can help move these processes forward to a peaceful political solution, then the better it is for us. So we're hoping that the prestige and the credibility of Kofi Annan and Graça Machel and Benjamin Mkapa will make both sides see sense. But the first part of it, of course, has got to be that Mwai Kibaki has got to accept that there's a crisis in the country. He's acting like nothing is wrong, and that's not the way to do it. And it's not about selecting a team led by the vice president to do this. It's got to be he himself accepting this and moving it on.
Maina Kiai in Nairobi. We're also joined by Mukoma Ngugi, a Kenyan writer in Cleveland, Ohio. He's a commentator on BBC's Focus on Africa magazine. Mukoma Ngugi, you are very critical of Raila Odinga and the Orange Democratic Movement.
Yeah, I think, well, first I should say that, most of the things I've been critical of ODM can also apply to PNU. What I'm trying to argue, and I've been arguing in my writing, is that we need to name things. We need to call things what they are. We need to realize that the nature of African politics for the last 50 years has been changing. So we find that people automatically assume that because somebody is in the opposition, it means they're good guys, because traditionally that has been the role of the opposition. Now, we're in a situation where the government in power in most African countries is neoliberal, and the opposition party is equally neoliberal. This is to say that both parties in power, or once the opposition gets into power, we shouldn't expect a people power a revolution, if you will, or progressive politics. So essentially, that's my first criticism of the way we are approaching African politics. Certainly, things have changed. We can no longer assume the opposition automatically means the good guys.
You also make the point in some of your articles that that Odinga is actually a multimillionaire and with a company, a family-owned company with ties to multinationals as well. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, certainly. What we have seen in Kenya is two elites, two elite leaders. We have Mwai Kibaki, a very wealthy Kenyan, and then we have Raila on the other side, a very wealthy Kenyan, using ethnicity on both sides to mystify their servicing of international capital, if you will. So we end up in a situation where you have a large majority of poor Luos and a large majority of poor Kikuyus fighting each other but not realizing that indeed they are proxies to maintain these two leaders in power. So yes, Raila cannot put himself as a people power president. And I think that's something we're seeing in the whole of the opposition. I mean, certainly the opposition is a spectrum of people. You have very progressive individuals, but by the same time, you have very, very retrogressive individuals. So I think we need to have a nuanced approach in dealing or in analyzing ODM or PNU politics.
Maina Kiai, do you share that analysis? You're chair of Kenya's Human Rights Commission.
Yes and no, but I think yes and no, and I think that there's a lot to criticize on both sides. But I think there's something else here that I wish Mukoma would consider, and